Okay. Music good there?
I can't hit. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. It's Valkyrie Ice again, and welcome to Musings of a Demented Mind. Tonight I've got something special for you. Got my good friend Theodore Holden, and I'd like to invite him to talk about his book, The Ganymede Hypothesis. Now, I know you've heard me talk before about electric universe theory and the fact that most of our historical information that you're taught in school is most likely wrong. And tonight I'd like to discuss one aspect of that, the idea that our solar system is actually a composite of two mini solar systems that connected and impacted, and that the human race is most likely not native to Earth. So, Theodore? Yeah,
Okay.
sure, sure.
Okay, it's like the question with this one is always where to start. Now, one question I have is like, does Zoom have the capability of like showing my screen? Can I show my screen on Zoom?
Oh, yes, you can. You are free right as of now. In fact, you know
okay,
something?
question is how do you do it?
At the bottom is the green
Share
button.
screen. Press the green button.
Yeah, you hit the green button at the bottom, says share, and you should be able to multi-share.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, it says that you would have to enable it.
Hold on a second. Let me get this. I know what I do. I will make you host and allow you to screen share. That's how I'm going to do it. Now you are host. You are the man. This is now ran by the man himself, the mathematician, the genius, Ted Holden. You're in control now, brother.
Wow. Okay, let's press the green button and the select a window or an application screen, right? Just press screen, whiteboard. I'm just going to press screen. Google Earth Pro, nothing happened. I pressed screen just now, nothing quite happened. And oh, that would just show you again. That's, let me press that thing and say share, right?
There you go.
What I have here is a picture of a Herbig Haro object.
Wow.
Okay. Are you seeing that now? There's a problem with the English language when people talk about Herbig Haro things, right? Because this to me is obviously more than one thing, right? It's like you've got a bunch of stars or protostars or planets in line. We tend to think of solar systems as being orbital systems. I mean, this is a very young solar system, but it's not an orbital system. Okay, it's linearly aligned. It's an electromagnetically aligned system of cosmic bodies. Okay, now this is the biggest thing that they teach wrong. Like in schools, right? They teach a gravity only cosmology. They teach that gravity is the only thing that meaningfully affects what you see in the heavens, right? And you get yourself a telescope or something. No, that's completely wrong. Gravity is by 40 orders of magnitude the weakest force in nature. Asking gravity to form a solar system up from swirling masses of dust or to hold a spiral galaxy together is like asking the littlest kid in the school to do the powerlifting event. It's plain ridiculous. You know, in real life, it's the major forces in the universe that govern what you see in the skies, right? It's electromagnetic forces, and this is what you're looking at here. What you're seeing here is like an electrical current, which is called a Birkeland current, which is a twisted pair of currents. It's two currents really, and it in fact it almost looks like a DNA RNA spiral. You've got this twisted pair of currents. You've got like space, which is not a vacuum, it's a plasma, and you get like charge separation across vast regions of space. And because of this charge separation, you get electrical currents, you know, these Birkeland currents arcing through space, right? And at the points at which these two currents and a Birkeland current cross each other, you have electrical short circuiting, right? You have what they call Z-pinch points. And these Z-pinch points, the points where these currents cross each other, do have the power to agglomerate plasma into much more solid objects, still protostars, stars, and possibly also rocky bodies like the Earth and Mars. Okay, although it's also possible that rocky bodies like the Earth and Mars are created via fission from stars or dwarf stars. Okay, but what you're seeing here is called a Herbig-Haro object. I believe that's a misuse of language. It should be called a Herbig-Haro string because it's more than one object. You know, the Birkeland current has more than one pinch point and there's more than one body being formed up there. Now, can you see my mouse cursor here?
Yes.
See, like in the, you know, this is dead straight here. Now, if I expand that a little bit, and okay, that's not going to work, right? At any rate, you're seeing probably at the ends of this thing, seeing like double layers here, which are sort of like, you know, similar to capacitors. This is something I don't understand as well as I would like to. I mean, the thing about double layers, right? I mean, I need to get together with Don Scott and go over that a little bit. The proposition that Troy and I advanced in Cosmos and Collision, or the Ganymede hypothesis, is that our own solar system started off looking like this, right? You had a string of bodies and there would be one direction, which we'd call the system north, okay, which all of the bodies were moving towards the system north at one point very early on. And in the middle of this thing, more or less, you had the sun, which is a main sequence star. To the north, you had Jupiter, right? And then to the south, you had Saturn. Jupiter was a dwarf star at the time. Saturn was also a dwarf star. And you had other bodies aligned with Saturn. You may have had smaller bodies like Titan or like Iapetus orbiting Saturn, right? But the main bodies that were aligned with Saturn were still in this electromagnetic form, you know, this linear form. Would have been Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and then Earth. These bodies all have, those four bodies all have roughly the same axis tilt, right? And that tells a story. See, Troy and I discovered that the history of our solar system and the history of human origins, solar system origins and human origins have to be studied together. There's no way to make sense out of either one separately. Okay, the two biggest keys to understanding the history of our system were eye sizes and axis tilts. Okay, given any kind of a theory as to how solar systems form up, including mine, including the standard theory, you would expect these, the spin axes, the rotational axes of the bodies in the system to all be roughly perpendicular to the plane of the system. You understand what I'm saying, right? It's like you've got like the sun and Jupiter and Mercury all do sort of look like that. The sun, Jupiter, and Mercury all have axis tilts of less than 10 degrees. You've got one, you've got Uranus in the system, which has got a goofball axis tilt. It's got its own separate little story. But these other four bodies, Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth, all have roughly the same 26-degree axis tilt, right? Like 24 to
And
28.
that's why we have seasons.
I'm sorry?
That's why we have seasons.
Well, yeah, that's why we have seasons. Okay, but there's a question as to how that came about. You know, the fact that they all have the same axis tilt means they were kept as a group. And the next thing you would ask yourself is, you know, what would there be about having these four bodies kept as a group that would give them all the same axis tilt? And what you're seeing is the answer to that. It's like these four bodies, you know, Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth were in this linear type of an alignment. They flew into the plane of the Sun-Jupiter system from the south at roughly, from the system south at roughly a 26-degree angle. And as the individual bodies peeled out and began to orbit the sun the way they do now, ordinary gyroscopic force caused them to keep that 26-degree axis, you know, angle of approach. It caused them to keep that 26-degree angle of approach in the form of axis tilts. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there you've got a big part of the history of our solar system. Okay. Venus has the same, almost exactly the same axis tilt as Jupiter. It's like Venus seems to be upside down. It rotates the wrong way, right? But, you know, and this is an area where I disagree. I believe I've discovered a flaw in the claims that the Thunderbolts group make. You know, they claim that Immanuel Velikovsky had made a mistake, you know, that Venus was ejected from Saturn and not Jupiter. I believe that's wrong. I believe that Velikovsky got it right in the first place. It's like, you know, the Wikipedia article on Venus has changed the way that they describe its axis tilt. They give it as, you know, like about 2.6 some degrees now. Let me explain, right? It's like, really, they used to give it as 177 degrees, right? And you know, you had to look at that like more than one or two times to figure it out. It's like that's the same axis tilt as Jupiter. Jupiter's axis tilt is about 3 degrees, you know, 2 points some odd, and less than a half a degree apart. But the hell of it is that you know, that Venus was ejected from the equatorial region of Jupiter, and that would give it a reverse spin. Okay, if you think gears, right, then you can imagine how that would work. It's like being, you know, ejected, you know, a dwarf star or even a main sequence star would eject material as a means of losing,
Equalizing charge.
equalizing charge, yeah, or just getting rid of too much static charge, right? That would be a normal sort of a thing, right? So that you've got some of these rocky bodies like the Earth and Mars almost certainly ejected from Saturn, right? Venus was ejected from Jupiter like that. You know, ancient literature describes Athena being born from the head of Zeus, right? That says they saw Venus being ejected from the body of Jupiter, right? You know where the word Jupiter comes from,
Not off the top of my head.
Valkyrie?
No.
Yeah, okay, it's like, you know, theologians, Bible scholars describe there being two separate versions or two separate, I hate getting old, it's like I lose track of words, it should be at the tip of my tongue, right? But it's like, at any rate, you know, two separate ways of talking about God. You've got Elohim or El, right? El is like
Plural.
the El was like the standard word for Saturn all throughout the Mediterranean basin. okay, just EL. And then sometimes they would add something a little bit in front of the vowel, right? Same word. All of these Israelite names that end in EL, Israel, Michael, right? Gabriel, Daniel, right? All these names are basically just something or other, and then Saturn, right? Now, the other word that they use for God is Yahweh. That's the same word as Jove, okay, which is another word for Jupiter, okay. Dios Pitar, that's Sanskrit, right? That was just borrowed into Latin. Okay, Dios Pitar, Jupiter, right? Dios Pitar means sky father, right? But it doesn't, guys like Mircea Eliade got that wrong, right? That they would, some of these books you'll get in college courses will tell you that like sky father means that they were worshiping the sky, like our father, the sky, right? Is what they claim. And that's not what it means. It means our father in the sky. It means Jupiter, right? It means exactly the same thing that it meant 4,000 years ago. Understand what I'm
Yeah, this is
saying?
the Thunderbolts idea that originally Saturn used to be the primary
Okay,
sun, and then Jupiter pushed Saturn away from
no,
Earth and threw
that's
them
not
both into the outer solar system.
like well, that's close. Yeah, that's close. It's like basically you had, um, here's the way Troy McLaughlin describes it. New messages received from 70141. Oh, give me a second. Let me shut the stupid thing off. Take a second. Getting all kinds of people wanting money for different kinds of political causes.
Oh yeah, spam mail. I get that all the time.
Didn't quite work. At any rate, um, you had the sun and Jupiter, which were originally close enough that the Jupiter wasn't going to escape being captured, right? Sooner or later, the sun was going to capture Jupiter, but the sun was moving northwards, right? When it did encounter Jupiter and capture it, and capturing Jupiter slowed the sun down, right? And then you've got these four bodies to the south. You've got Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth, and plus other bodies, right, in that system. But the four that were in the electromagnetic alignment were Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth. Those are the four bodies that have that have the 26 degree, roughly 26-degree axis tilts. And this is something else that the Thunderbolts group gets wrong. They claim that the blue body in the Shamash glyphs and the artwork that you see showing this stuff was Venus, right? It wasn't. It's like Venus doesn't have the axis tilt to have ever been part of the Saturn system. This body right next to Saturn was Neptune. Okay, Neptune does have the proper axis. So they didn't investigate the question of that axis tilt. Now, the other thing I would tell you is that, like, somewhere around the late 70s and early 80s, when Eduardo Cardona and David Talbot and F. Cochran were putting this version of this thing of theirs together, they did not have the axis tilts for the outer planets, right? I mean, that came in, I guess, late 70s. But it came in after that book of David Talbot's had already been published. Okay, so I mean,
That book was the Saturn myth.
The Saturn myth, yeah. So that Troy McLaughlin and I are working with somewhat, in some cases with better information than they had. Okay, so that the sun moved northward and then captured Jupiter, so that you had in the north like a very bright Sun-Jupiter system, right? You've got the main sequence star, and then you've got another thing which had been a dwarf star, and may have still been a dwarf star for some period of time after the capture. Now, there's one other kind of thing I need to run by as far as like things capturing things, right? When a dwarf star is captured by a main sequence star, the dwarf star goes out and becomes like a gas giant planet. Okay, it's as if you had a 200-foot lightning rod glowing in a storm, right? And then while that's happening, here comes the Acme lightning rod company's truck, and these guys jump out and they construct a 1,000-foot lightning rod like about 300 feet away. Well, what's going to happen, right? The 200-foot lightning rod is no longer the focus of any kind of discharge. It's not. It's going to stop glowing. You see what I'm saying? It's like stars are
Hmm.
powered by these Birkeland. Okay.
Basically, the sun
In fact,
hijacked the current.
yeah, the sun hijacked the current. Okay, and believe it or not, our entire galaxy has its own Birkeland current. It goes straight through the center, and what is that thing called? It's called the double helix. The double helix. Like I said, don't ever get old, man. The idea is to get to be about 55 or so, and then you get run over, you get killed in an airline crash or something, right? I mean, I've done it the wrong way.
Hey,
I'll
I'm
be
53.
76.
Don't say that. I don't want to die anytime
Okay.
soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'll be 76 in June. That's starting to feel like too long. At any rate.
So basically, you've got a Birkeland current coming into
Yeah,
the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which acts like a homopolar
and
motor.
that's called the double helix. Yeah, the
Mhm.
double helix nebula is what that's called. That was the word that I couldn't quite bring to the tip of my tongue, right? At any rate, yeah, so that galaxies are powered by these Birkeland currents that run through. The spiral galaxies are powered by these Birkeland currents, right? I mean, behave like a
Yeah,
homopolar
basically, the
motor.
spiral arms are where the current is spreading out from the center.
Right. Um, that's interesting. But here's what happened. Look, because of Kepler and Jupiter, the sun slowed down, right? And that let this other group of four bodies catch up with the sun. We catch up with the sun Jupiter system, right? Now, when that happened, you've got, if you didn't know better, you would think that, like for the southern system, in fact, you had two systems sitting here. So I'm sorry, it's like backtrack a little bit. You have this bright system in the north and then a very dark purplish system in the south, right? A planet aligned with a dwarf star like Saturn was, before the time I'm talking about, is going to be inside the plasma heliosphere of the dwarf star. Okay, it's going to get enough radiant energy. You won't freeze to death. It's like, you're going to get radiant energy bouncing off the interior of this plasma heliosphere and then bouncing back onto the rocky bodies from all directions. See what I'm saying, right? But the entire middle part of the light spectrum, I'm sorry?
To clarify,
Yeah.
the coma of a electrically charged star like that would basically be a very large plasma atmosphere that glows purple, but is not hot enough to disintegrate anything inside it. It would basically provide a environment which is actually very conducive to life because it would keep the planets warm to a habitable temperature while protecting it from dust and debris and everything from outside, as well as preventing any starlight from getting through. You wouldn't be able to see the stars because everything would just be a uniform purple around the planets.
Mm-hmm. The the light situations you would have like on a planet like that, like Mars or Earth, either one, like when they were aligned with Saturn, would be, I mean, you get a deep purplish kind of a light, right? But that's all. It would be, what's the best way to describe it? The middle part of the light system, light spectrum is just going to be gone. It's not going to be there, right?
It
You
would
would
be like
expect the creatures
a room lit up by black lights.
Yeah, right. The middle part of the light spectrum is going to be gone. The creatures of such a world are going to have huge eyes, right? And the creatures, we've still got leftover creatures from that age, right? We've got, lemurs, tarsiers, owls. Those things still have the kinds of huge eyes that you associate, with that system. They're nocturnal creatures in our world, right? Now, the other thing which really had these huge eyes, the hominids, the Neanderthal. Um, the Neanderthal was basically a very advanced bipedal ape with dark world eyes, huge, right? Eyes very much larger than ours, nasal area very much larger than ours. Early human needles are common, while nobody's ever found the first Neanderthal needle. Do you understand the reason for that? Yeah, it's like a creature with a 6-inch fur coat doesn't require needles. Okay. Um, the Neanderthal was intelligent enough. He wasn't completely inventive the way we are. It's like he had a brain which was a bit larger than ours, but the Neanderthal brain was dominated by the area of the brain associated with vision, whereas our brains are dominated by the area associated with logic, okay, and critical thinking. Now, what does that tell you about the Neanderthal? These huge eyes, plus a brain which is dominated by the part of the brain associated with vision.
He
It
was
says
a
the
nocturnal
Neanderthal
predator.
brain to a large, yeah, but that also says that the Neanderthal brain to a large extent was the neurophysiological equivalent of the circuitry for a military night vision scope of some sort. You know, so that's what you're looking at. They were capable of making spears and, and fabricating, hard stone spear points and binding them to the spears, right, in glue. We chose something else the Neanderthal never had. They never were able, and monkeys and apes, the same thing. They cannot throw overhand the way humans do, right? So the humans are aquatic mammals, right? And the human swimming stroke is exactly the same motion as throwing overhand. Okay, monkeys and apes couldn't do that. The Neanderthal couldn't do that. Neanderthals use short little thrusting spears, just like the Zulus, right? So they're gonna like run up to some kind of a mammoth or some kind of an auroch or something like that and kill him with these little thrusting spears. And that's a hard way to earn a living. They find Neanderthal remains with all kinds of broken bones and whatnot, just from getting too close or getting a little bit slow or something.
They had to
Right,
fight
that's
up close and
common.
personal.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's interesting. Now the other thing that monkeys and apes cannot do is use spoken languages the way that we do, right? It's like that's the only reason that they can't teach chimpanzees or gorillas to speak English, right? They don't have voluntary control of the breathing. You see, the voluntary control of the breathing is an aquatic adaptation. That's for swimming underwater, right? Going after fish down, below the surface of the water.
Got to be able to hold your breath.
Yeah. They can teach monkeys, chimpanzees and gorillas to use deaf signs perfectly well, and at least one of the gorillas that they've taught to sign like that on several occasions has taken human IQ tests just for jollies, right, to see what would happen. And it achieved scores of 75 to 90. Well, guess what, right? I mean, that's better than average for some whole nations, right? Average IQ in Somalia is about 68, something like that, right? I mean, it's not 70. 70 is considered retarded by most people, right? But I mean, it depends on circumstance, what it is you're trying to accomplish.
In other words, they're
That's sort of
slightly below
interesting.
human average.
I'm sorry?
They're only slightly below human average.
Neanderthal was not stupid, right? It was something, I believe that the Neanderthal was the apex predator. It was the apex creature for dark worlds, like humans are the apex creature for bright worlds. I believe that anywhere out there yonder that you find bright worlds, you're going to find humans, or you're likely to. Anywhere. Walt Thornhill has said that, the most likely place to find living worlds is going to be in the neighborhood of dwarf stars, right? You've got the water, you've got the ideal conditions and everything. But I don't think Walt would like the kinds of people he would meet. I don't think he's really looked into that very much. You understand what I'm saying? You're not too likely to find humans. We do have human civilizations. I mean, Mars is inhabited now. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's like and you've got remains of cities and all kinds of urban infrastructure on Mars. And these were, the people that you see on Mars are not hominids and Neanderthals, are humans, right? But I mean, I believe they came here, after Mars had become bright, or shortly before Mars became bright, right? Somewhere around 4, 5, 6,000 years ago, the Earth, the plasma heliosphere broke up, and you got sunlight coming into these inner planets like Mars and Earth, and became possible to see things, to see out into the stars, right? Um, however, these earliest humans were surviving, when the Earth was still a dark place, torches, whatever, right? I mean, it's not like they couldn't survive into that environment. It's not ideal to them, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does a human have to have? What would a human home world, what would a reasonable human home world look like? I mean, it wouldn't look like this planet. Just wouldn't, right? This planet is intensely hostile to humans. The humans have never survived on this planet other than via technology. Okay. Humans are aquatic mammals, right? It's like this. You're familiar with Elaine Morgan, maybe?
Yes, she
The
did the
aquatic ape.
book, The Aquatic Ape.
Yeah. Now, there are two ways you could look at Elaine Morgan's theories, right? I mean, viewed as another version of evolutionism, it's just another flavor of BS, right? But you could also view it as a theory of human adaptation, and viewing it that way, the aquatic ape theory is the best theory that's ever come down the road, but it's never gotten any traction in academia. Two reasons, right? It's like, there's no physical evidence of it, that there's no aquatic human or ape fossils have ever been found, right? And number two says that there's never been a body of water on this planet which would be safe for humans to live in. And you only need to spend 10 minutes in the ancient sea monster section of the Smithsonian or any other major museum to comprehend why humans have never lived in water on this planet. Okay, that just wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's really dangerous.
Beautiful. Yeah, so it's perfectly good theory. It just needs another kind of a world to happen on.
Yeah, she tried to justify it by claiming that humans only lived in the coastal waters and, could always run to the shore whenever a shark or something came along.
That doesn't work. I mean, you've had white shark attacks like in 3 or 4 feet of water, right?
Uh-huh.
You get orcas come up on beaches to catch seals, right? And they catch them and drag them back into the water. So that still
Yeah,
doesn't
the
work.
shoreline wouldn't be safe.
There's too many things you could go wrong with that. It's like a human home world, a reasonable human home world needs to be bright, because of the relatively tiny eyes. It needs to be warm, because humans don't have fur. Okay, it needs to be wet because of all the aquatic adaptations. Okay, and according to Elaine Morgan, it's not like we were just wading around on shorelines. It's like we were totally adapted to live in deeper water. Okay, and then it needs to be protected, not only from sea monsters but also from cosmic radiation. Now, there's two bodies in our system which have the main thing that protects us from cosmic radiation is going to be an intrinsic magnetosphere. Okay, there's two bodies in our system that have that today. One is the Earth, the other is Ganymede, this largest moon of Jupiter's. And for a number of reasons, Troy and I came to the conclusion that you had one perfect world for humans in our system 40, 50,000 years ago, and that was Ganymede, it wasn't Earth. Okay. When the southern system approached the Sun-Jupiter system, if you didn't know better, you would think that the thing in front of the line would be Saturn, right? And then that all the smaller things would be trailing behind it. No, the thing in the front of the line was the Earth. Now, like I said, the Earth was on the edge, and the Earth was also the furthest thing outwards in the Saturn system, pointing outwards, right? Now, and I'm not seeing an easy, you know what? I was just wondering if there was an easy way to get back to Facebook, right? To clipboard, right? Let me put this silly thing down. Ah, can you still see my screen here?
I can see the Herbig Haro age, the Haro line photo.
Can Okay, I just shifted my viewing over to Facebook. Do you see the Facebook screen on my?
No, it's still showing the clipboard.
Okay, I'm going to give up and just go with human voices here for tonight, right? It's like the thing on the outside of the Sun Jupiter system was Ganymede, right? The two largest bodies in the respective systems, the two largest rocky bodies in the respective systems, the two things on the outside. And when the Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth system approached the Sun Jupiter system, the two things that came together were the Earth and Ganymede, right? Now you have to understand the way that the Earth was facing under those circumstances, right? It's like you had the northern part of the Earth was facing towards Saturn directly, had been for quite some time, for the entire existence of the Earth, right? You had all the landmass of the Earth was gathered in one place. That was called a supercontinent or Pangaea, right? And the thing which was right directly underneath Saturn was Pico Island, right? The Portuguese Azores. That's still the highest point of land in the Atlantic today, right? And that's called the center of the Mid-Atlantic Bulge. Okay, if you get on Google Earth and bring it to show Pico Island in the exact center, and then spin the Earth like 180 degrees, right? Just grab one corner on the side and pull it all the way around. What you're going to be seeing is the Pacific void. You're going to be seeing almost nothing but water, right? You're just going to be seeing an edge of Australia. And then everything else that you see there is just water, the void, right? So that when the Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth thing approached Ganymede, approached the Sun Jupiter system with Ganymede on the outer edge, then the part of the Earth that approached was the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? We got very close, and under those conditions, you had forming up between Earth and Ganymede an electrical water bridge. And I got that idea from Don Scott because I was asking him what exactly would cause, like creatures from this one planetary body to be captured by the other, right? And he said that's exactly one solution. That's an electrical water bridge. And you can just get on like YouTube and type in electric water bridge, right? And it'll show those. You get two beakers of water with enough of a charge separation between them, right? Like anode and cathode from a transformer, something like going into the one and the other, and bring them up to a certain point together, and you'll start to see like a filament of water, like a water tube stretching between the two, and it'll stretch. You pull them apart, the two beakers apart, and that water bridge will go quite a ways before it breaks apart. You see what I'm saying? How did you get, you had humans and other aquatic mammals transfer to Earth at that time, right, via this electrical water bridge. Now, either you had air bubbles in the water bridge, and they were able to survive that way, or they could really just hold their breath that long, right? And these people would have been, they're spending their lives, they're spending like 10 or 12 or 14 or 15 hours a day in water, right? They're probably better at holding the breath than we are. You understand what I'm saying? People would have been dark skinned. I mean, the original Cro-Magnon people, I mean, they're living in a very bright environment. And they would have ended up in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Now, that's not a formula for success, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean myself. What I believe to be the case is it was just by themselves in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I mean, they wouldn't have made it. You know, what I believe to be the case is that you had like natural kinds of symbiotic relationships between the various aquatic mammals on Ganymede, right? And, you know, when all these guys ended up in the middle, you know, in the Pacific Ocean, right? The whales and dolphins and whatnot, you know, you could see that the humans weren't going to make it out there in the middle of the ocean like that, no matter how good they were at swimming. And they just took them to the nearest large piece of dry land, which would have been Australia. So that you've heard of an out of Australia theory. I believe that the out of Australia theory is compatible with the Ganymede hypothesis. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. Now, you've got another question as to, you know, starting with something like you're seeing, if you're still looking at that Herbig-Haro string,
Mm-hmm.
like how does something like that ever get to be bent at a 26-degree angle from the other part of the system, right? That makes for an, here's what I believe happened. You know, at this point, the working hypothesis is that you only ever really had two of these approaches. You have the one near approach where humans got, you know, were transferred from Ganymede to Earth. And then you had an electromagnetic bounce, right? You know, you have this, what amounted to the electromagnetic equivalent of a train, of a train crash, right? And then you had you know, the Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth part of the system bounced, recoiled back, okay? But at the same time, it got bent, right? And this is, if you look at train wrecks, just get on Google and type in train wreck, right? And, you know, you'll find that when you get train wrecks like that, you know, where the engine and one or two cars keep, you know, stop, and then the rest of these train cars keep trying to go forward, right? It's like they're going to no place to go forward, they're going to go outwards. Do you see what I'm saying? You know, and even after, you know, this Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth system recoiled outwards at a 26-degree angle, sort of, you still had the electromagnetic connection between the four bodies, so that, you know, they were still straight, right? Or they straightened out amongst themselves. If there'd been anything different from that. Does that start to make sense? And then the
Yeah, it's basically
next
the
time,
inertia from
so yeah, and like I say, I've got, let me just get finished going through a little bit of this, then I'll see if I can recover some of these other images or you know, a little, because I had more than one thing that I wanted to show you here. You only ever had two of these approaches, I believe, right? You had this first approach where humans transferred, then you got this electromagnetic recoil, and then also the southern part of the thing split, you know, it got bent, right? Just for the same reason that rail cars, you know, bend at angles, you know, or end up at angles to each other when you have a train wreck, right? And then the next time this thing approached the sun, I believe, see, Troy McLaughlin has always assumed that these approaches were on a spiral path, right? And I believe this original first approach had to be dead straight or it wouldn't work, right? You couldn't get that. You couldn't get that electric, you know, water bridge between things which are moving, you know, at spirals with respect to each other or anything like that, right? This first approach was dead straight. The second approach, you know, at which the southern system was captured, was probably on a spiral path. In fact, I would bet it heavily that way. So, I mean, Troy was half right about that one. You see what I'm saying? And the southern system, you know, made this approach to the Sun-Jupiter system at roughly a 26-degree angle from the south, and probably on a spiral path, and that as these bodies, you know, were captured by the sun and began to orbit, the sun, just ordinary gyroscopic force caused them to retain that 26-degree angle of approach in the form of axis tilt. So that's the basic history of the solar system. Now, people from Earth, people from Ganymede, right? I mean, the human world was Ganymede. The hominid world was Earth, and that just kills the theory of humans evolving from hominids. They don't even come from the same world, right? If you go back before these two approaches like that, then I suspect it might have even been the case that Saturn was separated from the sun by a distance similar to the distance between Proxima Centauri and the two main sequence stars of Alpha Centauri now. Okay. I mean, everybody agrees that Proxima Centauri cannot be gravitationally bound to the two main sequence stars. So it's out there in the distance, right? There's no way to believe that humans are descended from hominids. In fact, you've had four things that ever resembled humans on the Earth, right? You had monkeys, then apes, and then hominids, and then humans, right? The hominids are, unless there actually is such a thing as Bigfoot, then the hominids are extinct. Okay. Now, what's the guy's name? You've got one gentleman who I respect who believes
Lloyd Pye.
that Lloyd Pye, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I haven't lost your memory yet. It's like, that's good. Lloyd Pye believed that you still have hominids on the Earth, but just they're living in the 65% of the land area of the Earth, which is seen only from the air, right? Humans live in, he claimed that humans live in niche areas, in parts of the Earth which are, reasonable for humans to live in, but that, in other parts of the Earth that you've got things like the Yeti or things like, the abdominal snowman or
Gigantopithecus.
Bigfoot. No, the gigantic, something like that wouldn't, I don't have any picture of him surviving into our age. There's a size limit for every kind of animal because of the square cube thing, right? And, those size limits were all uniformly higher, larger in past ages, even recently than they are now. You go back like 10 or 12,000 years ago, it's like you had, aside from many dinosaurs that might have remained at that time, you had like the imperial mammoths out there, like in California, you had a 2,500-pound bear. When you had a North American super lion, it would have been 6 feet at the shoulders, 1,500 pounds. You had a 700-pound beaver, like in Minnesota, right? So you had about 40 species of megafauna that were lost. And I suspect that the end of the megafauna would have come like with this final capture, with this capture event of the southern system. Sometime after the capture event, Saturn basically flared, and you had the flood, and you have the beginnings of ages that we have historical records of, or records at least in folklore or in literature, in ancient literature, right? We don't have much in the way of, like written descriptions of dinosaurs, but you had like petroglyphs in North America, which were common at the time of Thomas Jefferson, and which you've still got one or two of in places here and there, right? You've got like
that haven't been vandalized and destroyed.
Yeah, you've got sauropod petroglyphs out in Utah, right? You've got that one representational petroglyph of a stegosaur up there in Lake Superior, right, Massinac. And do you know Vine Deloria, or do you know who he was? He was the best known of all. Vine Deloria, the best known of Native American authors, right? President,
I'm not familiar with him.
2 or 3 times the president of the National Council of American Indians, right? He came to Thunderbolts conference in Portland, Oregon in '95, right? And he said that he mainly wanted to hear my little talk about dinosaurs, right? Because he told me he was writing a sort of a series of books, one of which I know got published, right? It's called Red Earth, White Lies. Okay, there's one chapter like in Red Earth, White Lies about dinosaurs in Indian oral traditions and petroglyphs and whatnot. And he said that like Mishi Pishu is a name similar to Mississippi, right? It means water panther. That's what they call the stegosaur, right? The Indian oral traditions describe the stegosaur or describe the water panther as having a cat-like face, reddish fur, a saw blade back, and a spiked tail that he used as a weapon, right? That's a stegosaur. No other animal that's ever lived in the Americas meets that description, right? Now, Lewis and Clark, you had these Mishi Pishu glyphs along the Mississippi. Mississippi means mother of waters, I believe. Mishi Pishu meant water panther. Lewis and Clark said that the native gods were in mortal terror at the sight of these petroglyphs, because the original meaning was caution, one of these things lives here, right? And that the Indians were very afraid of them. It's sort of intriguing, right? Bond told me that he had been making a compendium of Indian oral traditions, like all the way up and down North and South, Central and South America, from Alaska down to, Argentina and Brazil, right? And the funny thing is, you actually get some of the largest dinosaur remains that we know anything about are coming from that tip of South America, right? It's like what they call the Titanosaurus, the Argentinosaurus, right? Some of these things are like typically 150 feet long, a couple of hundred tons, right?
The biggest dinosaurs of all.
Yeah, now are you familiar with my little, treatise on gravity and the problem? So that's the thing Bond said he wanted to talk about.
The fact that the Earth's gravity appears to have changed.
Yeah, it would have to have at least a 3-to-1 attenuation of gravity for one of these large dinosaurs to be able to stand up at all, right?
It'd have to be 3 times lower than it is now, because otherwise they collapse under their own weight.
Probably more than that. It's like, numerically, it's like, what I come to is that for the strongest human athletes we know anything about, which could be like your absolute top heavyweight powerlifters like Kazmaier or Magnuson, right? And for one of these guys, some are right around, just the math of it says some are right around 18, 20, 21,000 pounds. It would be the same level of effort just to stand up as it is to do one of these 1,000-pound squats or deadlifts at the normal weight, right? These guys are normally like 350, 380 pounds.
Yeah, the skeletons for the dinosaurs won't even stand the stress. They have to be reinforced with steel to be able to stand under normal gravity.
But I mean, skeletons don't lift things. Muscle lifts things, right? Now, there's no difference between muscle tissue between men and women, or between any two kinds of vertebrate animals, right? It's all the same. It's just how strong something is. It's just a question of how much muscle mass does he have and how well is it trained, right? Men and women, did you ever see any of these pictures of Katie Sandwiener from the 1890s?
No.
This is a girl who grew up in a circus, never had a doll baby, just barbells, right? Now, when she grew up, she was one of the prettiest women in her generation, right? Very, usually the women with the perfect bodies are all like under 5 feet tall, right? Gymnasts and whatnot. And Katie was like, perfect, right? But about 6'1" and about 215 or 220 pounds. She could put 300 pounds on a bar and do military presses with it, So most guys can't do that, right? Like I say, it was not a question You grew up in a circus, like I say. So it's just a question of muscle mass and how well is that muscle trained. If you take a sauropod dinosaur, a large dinosaur, and put him next to Bill Kazmaier, what you're looking at is like one creature at the top of the food chain, the other pretty near the bottom, right? Kazmaier's body is like 90% bone and muscle, right? I mean, he uses food to flavor his anabolic steroids with. Right now, the
Mhm.
brachiosaur's body is mostly gut and digestive system to process all this low value food, right? Like leaves and grass.
Mhm.
So that if Kazmaier couldn't function beyond 20,000 pounds in our world, then there's no way in hell the brachiosaur could. Okay. And like I say, you get to things like the Gigantopithecus, like you were talking about. I don't think he'd be able to function in our world right now. There's a number of other things like that, right? The imperial mammoth, probably not. The biggest elephant, the largest elephants are like 14, 15, 16,000 pounds. And that's a sort of a good sanity check, right? Because like I said, numerically, the number that I get is very similar. You wouldn't expect the biggest elephant to be, as efficient as somebody like Kazmaier. The base of comparison here is Bill Kazmaier, right? So you would expect
Mhm.
the real world number to get to be a bit lower than that, and it is, right? It's like, the real world limit is about 16,000 pounds, which is what the Smithsonian gives out for that stuffed elephant of theirs. And the theoretical limit is about 20,000 pounds, right? Um, Any rate, that's just all sort of interesting. Electrical phenomena. There's another one of these pictures I was hoping to show you guys. It's like electrical phenomena are scalable, right? All of
Mhm.
these things in space are scalable. It's like the Herbig Haro object is at one particular scale. You see the exact same thing at a vastly bigger scale. You see what they call strings of galaxies, right? Now, there's no way to explain a string of galaxies and these strings of galaxies are on spiral paths, right? There's no way to explain that with a gravity only cosmology, right?
Mhm.
Whereas with the
Whereas
cosmology
if
I'm
they're
talking
being
about,
formed along a current,
yeah, so it's like basically what you've got is just a much bigger, much more powerful Birkeland current, and the thing that you're getting at at pinch points, the Z pinch points of that current is going to be entire galaxies, not stars.
mhm.
It's the exact same thing, right? Just difference in scale. Like I say, you've got like the complete destruction of the whole idea of human evolution, right? It's like, I mean, humans
Well, it
not only
also
don't
goes down to the fact that it's consistent at all scales, it could
yeah,
explain why we've got DNA being a double helix because it's formed during electrical in an electrical Birkeland current, and that's why the atoms join together into a double helix form.
right. And the only thing is the DNA, RNA are like, you're talking about an information system. You're talking about something that you really need an intelligence, intelligence in order to explain. I mean, that's not going to happen just from, just because of electricity doing its thing, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you need some kind of religion or something like to explain DNA and RNA. I mean, if all you need is hydrogen atoms, then you may or may not need God. Okay. If you need living worlds, you pretty much have to have God or something like that, right? I mean, the living worlds aren't
Well,
just going to happen.
we disagree on
I'm sorry.
exactly what that God is. But,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm saying it's
mm-hmm.
not going to happen for no reason, right? Information
Mm-hmm.
systems don't just happen,
I can agree
right?
that there does appear to be signs of intelligent creation. I just don't buy that it's any religious concept we've developed on Earth.
It could
So,
be. I'm not going to argue that. Okay. But I will sit here and argue all day that evolution is a bunch of BS. And in fact, You know, I believe that this entire facade of 20th century magic physics is crumbling before our eyes. I don't believe
Mhm.
that relativity is in any better shape than evolution.
Nope.
You know, that's a long story. Let me see if I can get some of these other images here. It's like, let me, let's see, I've got your picture up here. I've got this picture from, okay, are you still seeing that picture of the Herbie Harrow string, or are you seeing like,
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. It's because clipboard's the only thing. I mean, maybe if you close the clipboard image, I can see whatever else is on your screen.
give me
But
a sec?
yeah, the
Oh,
only thing that's showing right now is
that's
just a
good.
clip.
So like I said,
The
the last previous time that, let's start over again. Can you go back to making one with Odin, the Imperial Master here?
depends
Uh,
on whether Odin is awake or not.
is Odin, are you still awake?
He,
I am here.
Okay, it's like I'm sort of stuck on that picture of the Herman Carrot string. I'd
Okay.
sort of like to get back to. I'd sort of like to get back to my browser here. It's like
Okay, what you do
let
is
me.
this is a key way of doing it. The easiest way I've discovered is to just shut down this screen, the share screen, close it down.
Okay, I'm not seeing a way to
It should
do
say
that
exit.
exactly.
It's on the top part of the screen.
It's on the top part.
Yeah,
Okay, stop sharing. Yeah.
yeah, stop
Okay,
sharing.
that was on the lower bar to begin with, right? Okay.
And then you reshare
So I was
again.
looking low and it's
There you
okay.
go. Now you start resharing, and then you reshare with your new screen.
Okay, give me a second. Do I have to have the new screen up before I reshare?
Yes, it makes so you can see what's there. Because you know we're sitting here dying right now with all this information. I'm having a heart attack. Valkyrie, this
yes.
guest is a monster. Is a monster.
Okay. Basic,
Why do
advanced.
you think I wanted to get
Well,
Theo on?
uh,
There's an awful lot of stuff that is covered by.
let me go to Google Earth here.
But
You know we
Let
just.
me do a quick.
My
Okay,
mom is even up looking, listening to. Oh, here we go.
there
There's
we
the
go.
Earth.
okay, so you can see Google Earth. This is the thing I wanted to show you, and it's not easy to get back to the Atlantic Ocean from what I was doing, but like, okay, here's Africa, right? And the Portuguese Azores is going to be over here somewhere. Let me just type in Pico Island. Is that what I have there? Yeah. Okay. Search. Okay.
Hey, I got a question for you. Is the Earth flat or round? Because I mean, you keep pulling the screen, it goes around and round and round.
Uh, yeah. Well, no. I mean, if the Earth was flat, then the cats would have just knocked everything off the edge. That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I've got one cat that's super good at that. This is Pico Island. Okay. This is the center of the Portuguese Azores. There's at least one pyramid type thing somewhere on the bottom of the ocean here. You can find it on Google Earth if you spend the time. Um, so this would have been the sub-7 point. This would have been the center of the Earth, like, and it still shows up as the center of Pangea when you.
Yeah, when you move everything together and put all the puzzle pieces together, that's dead center.
I've got this thing of yours. Okay, put that down here somewhere. And let me just grab this by the corner over here and just drag it all the way around. You see what I'm saying? It didn't quite work.
You've got
but
the
it's
great
that's
big
basically-
empty spot of Earth.
Yeah, it's got the Pacific void. That I didn't quite get that. Let me. Okay, start with Pico Island again, and then grab it here and drag it all the way over to here. There, that's the Pacific void. It's just a corner of Australia, and then nothing but water, right? The humans sort of splashed down around here. You with me? And the humans sort of splashed down around here, and then the whales and the the dolphins and whatnot, the orcas would have just taken the humans over here, right? They figured humans aren't going to make it with all these sharks and monsters and whatnot in the water and being out here in the middle of water, like 6,000 or 8,000 miles from anything. Well, it's not going to work. Anyway, let me get rid of this. But you're still seeing that picture of Google Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's hard for me to get used to. Stop sharing. Okay. Now, let me. Okay, this works. You guys, what are you seeing now, if anything?
Your bookshelves.
Nothing. I'm not sharing anything. No. Yeah, bookshelves. Okay. This is a picture I like. It's not related to what we're talking about, but oh. Share. I see. The color just changed.
Next time we do this, hopefully we'll be better organized.
Didn't work. That just shouldn't have ended up here.
Sorry, I didn't know how to use Skype.
I'm still here.
Are you
now.
seeing this
I don't
picture
go
of
far.
the? What are you seeing now?
You have to share a screen.
Bookshelves.
Yeah, you have to share a screen. Don't forget, you have to share a screen when you put it up. Trust me, Jeffrey Daugherty's next, but you know how I do it, Valkyrie. If you got to go overtime, you go overtime. Because I'm sorry, there's too much interest in this show. People are sending me messages like, we don't get the video picture. It's okay. But I'm like, it's okay. And they go, yeah, you're right. His information is too thorough.
Well, if we don't get everything covered this week, maybe I can talk you into coming back next week.
Oh, shoot.
I'm sorry. I'm not having.
We can
Like
do
I said,
Skype next week. I wouldn't care.
The last time I did anything with Zoom was more than 10 years ago. I'm sorry. It's like this is not.
I wish I was familiar with Skype, but you're familiar with it.
I wish I had the images. I would have been popping them up for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, how about this, Valkyrie? Y'all just talk. Don't worry about the pictures. If you're free next week, or give me a day you're free. Valkyrie, I know you'll be free because you'll be hungry for this one. Because y'all two have, I'm sorry, I have not seen such great minds just work together in a long time. Normally, y'all are bumping.
Well, Theo and I are old friends. We've been talking about this for years.
Oh, yeah, conspiracy.
Yeah, well, it's like I've been following this stuff since like the early 70s. Okay, that's how long it's been. I was at that conference at McMaster University where you had, Emmanuel Velkoff
I
was
think
there. And,
Theo and I have been talking for about 6 years now.
Yeah,
wow.
something.
Probably.
Like I mean, this is. I came across Valkyrie after I'd moved to Texas, right? Oh no, you still living around the DC area?
Oh yeah, now I'm in Laurel. and I'm loving it out here. But you know, DC I can't stand because it's too political. The natives are restless there, and they will steal your car, steal your house. They'll burn your house down. They're trying to kill you. You know what I mean? It's gotten worse in DC, worse than ever. And
Oh, it's like
and to make it worse, the homeless they can literally pitch a tent in your
I'm
yard if they
sorry,
have to.
they come pitch a tent in your yard.
They can pitch a tent in your yard, and you will have to get them evicted, which means you have to go to court if the court allows it to come to them, and then yes, that's how bad it is in D.C. You have a woman who lives right
Okay, well,
next to. Let me just say it right quick. You have a woman that lives right next to Duke Ellington School over there in Northwest, and on the school grounds they had 7 tents, and what was it, 20 some people living in all those tents, and they had to evict them.
That's insane.
That's insane.
Yes. DC is getting absolutely insane.
Texas, yeah, in Texas that wouldn't happen. So I mean, Texas has got problems, right, but doesn't have that one.
No, no, nothing near that way. I mean, Texas got the border problem, and finding bodies anywhere and everywhere.
Right. Now let me run something by you. It's like, I'm the world's best at, at minding everybody in the world's business except for my own, right? And so I've kind of lost track, of catastrophism for the last couple of years, right? I mean, I'm just sort of getting back into it now, and like the things that I've been worrying, concerning myself with for the last couple of years have been, like COVID and these vaccines, right? And I've been trying to warn the whole world about the vaccines and, getting, just getting pooped on every kind of way. I mean, like on social media platforms, right? Just getting getting off.
I think Daryl and I can both been dealing with that. So.
Okay, I mean, you guys know to avoid the vaccines, right?
I don't know. No, let me say avoid the vaccines. Anything, what did Ronald Reagan say? We're the U.S. government and we're here to help you. Excuse me, those are the 9 words you should run as soon as you hear.
9 scariest words in the English language or something like that?
Yes.
Right. So I no sooner finished, like convincing people, no sooner goes away, it gets settled more or less, or, or fizzles. And then I've got to try to convince the world about what's happening over there, like with the Ukraine and Russia, right? And that to me is unbelievable. We just had a vote taken to send $33 billion worth of, in theory, worth of U.S. arms, munitions, and stuff like that over there to the Nazis in Ukraine, right? And the vote was like, in the Senate it was 100 to 0, and in the House it was like 417 to 10. Right now, in the context of U.S. politics, the term bipartisan means evil and stupid, right? And in real life, the only way anything ever passes 100 to nothing in the U.S. Senate, there's only one cause for that to ever happen. That's blackmail. Okay, no other cause would ever.
Everybody's being forced to go along.
I'm sorry.
Everybody is being forced to go along.
The military-industrial complex, right? It's like what to do with $33 billion worth of, completely outmoded military hardware, F-16s, just all kinds of stupid stuff. At any rate, do you guys understand what the Ukraine is about, right? I mean, it's like, you've got
the
like
America put in a Nazi puppet government. They were in the process of exterminating the Russian population in Ukraine, and the Russians
Yeah, you got
asked
it. Most
Putin
people,
to come in and
most
save
people
them.
look at me like most people look at me like I've completely lost it when I try to say anything like that, right? I mean, even on
Yeah,
conservative forums
America
like Free
is trying to
Republic.
cover up its crimes in the Ukraine.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They
The Russians
don't want.
the Russians have destroyed something like 25 American financed, American run bio war laboratories on Ukrainian territory, right? You've got, since that overthrow of the elected government, like in 2014, you've had the Ukraine becoming like the internet, the global center of child trafficking, of money laundering, especially money laundering right now. The Biden family loves that one, and things which they couldn't even think about doing on American soil, right? The American people would kill them. There's no way in the world the American public would tolerate having bio war laboratories on American soil.
Well, there's a
Right?
bigger issue there too that no one wants to talk about. And I know we're going to get kicked off of YouTube, so I'm going to lay the bomb down. You ready? It's the
Yeah.
house of the Jewish mafia. Let's see how long I stay on YouTube after that. I was there in Ukraine. I've been there. And I know exactly what's there, besides money laundering and all that. Also, they've been selling body parts, you know what I'm saying? Hint, hint, to other nations, like kidney here, you know what I mean? There are lots of things that go on in Ukraine besides money laundering. I mean, that's how an actor, hold on, let me try it again. An actor became a billionaire.
Yep.
Are you talking about Volodymyr Zelensky?
Oh, yeah, he's a billionaire.
Look,
Yeah, they've caught how many
okay,
government employees leaving Ukraine with suitcases full of
yeah,
millions of dollars?
look, Zelensky was doing triple X rated vaudeville shows, before he was discovered by the deep state's talent scouts. Okay, he was doing some kind of thing where he was playing a piano without using his hands. Now think real hard. How can you picture anybody trying to play chopsticks without, not like Tchaikovsky's one of Tchaikovsky's concertos or anything like that, right? But he was playing chopsticks like on a piano without using his hands. This is one of these little acts. The guy's a sick pervert, right? And the whole thing is ridiculous. Right now, you've got like 60,000 guys trapped in those cauldrons over there on the western side of the Donbass. They would like to surrender, but they can't get permission to. They got no food, no water, no ammunition, no gasoline, no nothing, right? And like, what's logically, there's only one thing you can do is surrender, right? And the government in Kiev is taking orders from the Pentagon and the deep state, right? And they're saying, no, you can't, you need to fight to the last man. And you've got like women in these towns and villages and cities in the western part of Ukraine now are rioting. It's going to be, Ukraine's going to become the one-stop shop for mail order brides. Right? There ain't going to be any men of marriageable age in the place.
You got me.
I mean, particularly when you've got the Nazi militia taking refuge in civilian housing and using it as a cover in order to try and prevent Russian soldiers from firing back at them because they're firing from civilian apartment houses. And then when the Russians have no choice but to shoot back, oh look, the Russians are firing on civilians. It's like, no, the Nazi militia is hiding out in the buildings.
Let me run something else by. Look, you may not have noticed this at the time, right? I mean, in my 76 years on Earth, it's like I've seen two American presidents that I more or less like. I mean, it's going to be Ike and Donald Trump right now. when Donald Trump first took office, he had absolutely nothing to work with. I mean, nothing, right? Within a short period of time after Trump took office, you had two completely abominable bills that passed almost unanimously. The one was this, the sanctions on Russia, right? And this was like a worse set of sanctions than the sanctions against the Japanese that started World War II in the Pacific. Now, Donald Trump said it was an abomination. He signed it because all he would have done by vetoing it would be to look stupid. His veto proof. I mean, it was like right next to 100-0. And then, and in the House, same thing. And then, like about a month or a couple of months later, you had a bill that was just completely unbelievable. And this was called Cromnibus, okay, like continuing resolution omnibus spending bills. Real countries have budgets, right? Like banana republics have omnibus or Cromnibus bills. No, this Cromnibus bill parked like about $30 trillion under FDIC, in oil derivatives under FDIC. I call my friends in Houston, the LaRouche Group office in Houston. I asked them, like, what could these idiots possibly be thinking, right? I mean, it's like FDIC can't even protect you and me, like our little bank accounts, like in the savings and loan or whatever. I mean, you're talking about, parking $30 trillion in oil derivatives under FDIC. So what are they thinking, right? I just can't understand that. And one of them told me, he said, gee, you got to understand, Ted, it's got nothing to do with reality at all. They want to be able to tell the customers that they're selling these stupid things to that, oh, there's no problem, right? It's protected by FDIC. It's copacetic. Right? So in other words, they view their best customers as total idiots. Both of these things passed like almost 100-0, right? Or I think in the Senate probably was 100-0. Now, the way I view it is that these two bills taken together were a message from the deep state to Donald Trump. The message read, translated into plain English, the message said, listen up, fool. We control Washington, D.C., you don't. Right? That was the message, right? So when you get something like, like 100-0, like for arming Nazis against Christians over there in Ukraine, well, then that's that same unanimous vote that you had like for those two bills. You see what I'm saying? I figure in a reasonable world, you had 10 guys in the U.S. House that voted against that, right? You had 10 votes against that in the House of Representatives. In a reasonable world, those 10 would be allowed to live. You understand what I mean? That's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. I mean, which has taken time away from catastrophism and ancient history and all that kind of stuff, right? But at this point, I can't worry about any of this BS anymore. It's like I'm going to finish up. I've got like a website which is called veganymeathypothesis.com, right? And you can just download the latest copy of the Ganymede Hypothesis for yourself and read it. It's about 300 pages. And I don't quite have a paperback version of that just yet. I will get to that somewhere here, another month or so. And, that's sort of like what I've been up to. I've got a couple of other things that, books and things which might interest Tom, Dick, or Harry. But, the thing that if anybody remembers me 30 years from now or any longer than that, it'll be for this book called The Ganymede Hypothesis. Okay, can you pull that up on your own screen and maybe show that to people? veganymeathypothesis.com.
Okay. Weekendhypothesis.com. Oh, you're in. Your host. Oops, your host. I forgot. But something to add to what he's saying.
I've lost.
I made you host.
Yeah.
I love this man. Let me tell you, someone that shot it.
Let me click that red button that says "end" here. If yeah, okay, that's the same. And oh no, cancel.
It's the other. It's the bottom one. I think it is. Hold on. Let me see which one it is. Then you can transfer. It says
I'm not sharing my screen right now. Look, it's like.
Well, listen. How about this? I'm gonna make a special arrangements just for my brother here, cause he told the truth. But I want to say something. I want people to take note that it's really kind of scary when you talk about Ukraine, because people want to get sensitive. I'm sorry, I'm using the word right. Sensitive, and they say, "Oh, he said Jews." Okay, let me explain something to you. When you have a population that's controlling the entire flow of currency in a country, from the presidency all the way down to negotiating with the United States government for their weapons lab. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. Weapons lab. Then we have an issue. But I'm trying to understand something. Why is it always that when it comes to someone saying, the Jews that live in the country are having it hard, and the first thing they do is throw up Nazis? I mean, I need people to think. Why is it the first thing that's thrown up is the word Nazi?
Yeah, okay. I
Because
think you can make that.
people look at it negatively.
Yeah, I have my own explanation as to what the appeal of Nazism is, continuing into our age, right? It's like, within my experience, ordinary Jewish people are perfectly ethical, right? They're good people. It's like, the typical ordinary Jew who works as a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist, or owns some kind of little business or something like that, neither knows anything nor gives a rat's ass about central banking or communism or the Kalergi plan or any of that shit, right? Or Kabbalistic practices. But he gets blamed for all that stupid shit, right? And he gets punished for all that shit. You'll never read about the Rothschilds being punished for anything. That's the problem. Okay, I mean, the Rothschilds are that's I mean, they don't represent anything except themselves. I wouldn't even know where to start with that one. It's like, do you guys understand? I mean, how how close the Rothschilds have come to owning the entire world?
No,
Yeah.
please tell. Please, just give us. Look, I want it from the man's brain, the man that has lived it. You 70 plus years old. I'm not going to say the number.
Yeah, okay. Let me run this by you. It's like, in the Napoleonic Wars, beginning with the Battle of Trafalgar, right, which gave England unchallenged mastery of all the world's waters. And then 2 or 3 years later, you had Waterloo, which gave the Rothschild family complete and total control of England, right? Here's what happened. It's like the Rothschilds had their own agents sitting there observing the Battle of Waterloo, and as soon as they were able to discern that Napoleon was losing or was going to lose, they ran clippity clop, back to the beach where they had their own little boat sitting there. And then as quick as they could possibly row a little boat back to England, back to London, and told everybody that Napoleon had won. They're going to be French soldiers in London like in a week and a half, and everybody sold everything for pennies on the dollar, right? It's like the Rothschilds bought up everything in England that was worth owning for pennies on the dollar. If they'd had a real king, if England had had a real king at that point in time, it would have rounded them all up and shot them. But it didn't happen, right? So you ended up with this one stupid family owning and controlling the nation, which had complete and total control of the world's waterways, oceans, and seas for the 100-year period between like 1814, whatever, and 1914. There's 100 years of like one family owning the earth, right? And that basic thing is still there, right? I mean, the Rothschilds are still there, the East India Company, all of these aspects of the United Kingdom are still there. Now, the LaRouche organization would tell you that, that between Germany and Russia and China and Japan, there isn't any natural enemy to the United States, right? The closest thing there is in real life to a natural adversary or enemy for the United States is England. And they don't mean the English people, they mean the Rothschilds, okay? And that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about MI6 and all this other stuff. And LaRouchePack.com on the internet. Everybody should know about that, right? I mean, if there's such a thing as salvaging our system, I mean, without just some kind of a total civil war, then they're going to be the ones that would have the ways to do it, at least most of it. That would be what I would tell you guys still there?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I'm chewing this up right now. Keep going. I'm learning. I'm learning.
Okay.
I mean, this little roost pack you're talking about. Yeah, I know about that, and it's kind of like uh-huh. So the Rothschilds were controlling the banks of England, and they were controlling the finances. And if you remember back in the days of George Washington negotiated to get $20,000 from one of the Jewish leaders that was here in America at the time, even though later he said no Jews allowed on American soil. I mean, it's kind of fishy if you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, you don't have any reason to hate ordinary Jews. Okay, you don't. It's like, the people that you want to hate are going to be like the Rothschilds and people that work for them and people that are
The
aligned with them,
elites.
people like Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein's of the world, right? George Soros, all these are
Oh, we
lunatics.
gotta hate Soros. That's something.
And
Soros ain't.
oh yeah, that guy's a real life Bond villain. That's as hateful as it gets. Yeah, you've had you've had three American presidents. I mean, what am I thinking? Like three before you had like Abraham Lincoln, William McKinley, and then John Kennedy. They all tried to take on the bankers, right? They were all assassinated, right? This is what I tell people that I like about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only American president that there's ever been. It's the only guy there's ever been with the brains and the guts and the resources to take these lunatics on and to stay alive while he was doing it. Okay. I mean, that's the difference. I mean, Donald Trump has taken these guys on and is still alive. You had Otto von Bismarck said that there was no doubt in his mind that the Rothschilds had orchestrated not only the American Civil War but the assassination of Lincoln. Okay, and it's basically what you look at. The whole history of the United States is a history of, like the American Republic trying to stay out of the clutches of this global empire, right? And they finally lost the battle like in 1913, right? They implemented the central bank and the income tax at the same time. The idea was to do something which I don't think Alexander Hamilton had ever advocated. I think he was describing the way that it worked. He said that in countries that have a reliable way of paying interest on government debt serves all of the main purposes of money, right? What I think the idea of what they did in 1913 was to set up a system whereby government debt becomes the main basis of money, and the income tax is used to pay interest on that debt, and then they just roll the principal over in perpetuity, right? And don't worry about it. At best, that was a fragile system. At worst, it was a time bomb with a 100-year fuse, right? And that 100-year fuse burned out like in 2013, right? It's been, not quite 10 years. So you understand the problem. That's the basic problem the world faces. How do we set up a system to deal with money that doesn't involve Rothschilds, right? Now, Putin is on the edge of doing it. That's why they hate him, right? That's why they killed this guy Gaddafi in Libya, right? Gaddafi was on the edge of setting up a gold-based monetary system for all of Africa. He was going to create like a United States of Africa. That was too much for them, right? So they killed the guy. I've heard that the same
Yeah,
thing
that's kind of what's going on with Russia right now. It's in the process of setting up a system that America is not part of.
Yeah, you got to understand, Putin is just kicked their asses. I mean, he is really he has really just sucked it to them big time here. It's like, you see that, I mean, between Russia and Ukraine, it's like they control, between the two of them, you're talking about at least 40% of the wheat exports in the world. And just Russia alone, you talk about 70% of the, the chemical fertilizer exports in the world, right? And so, you've got Russia and Putin going to be sitting on top of the most, if not all, of the main choke points of the world food system. And, what does Joe Biden do? He basically implements every possible kind of economic sanction. But Russia's immune to economic sanctions, right? It's like, um, they're ready for this. I mean, Putin is prepared for every facet of this stupid business. He, when they did that, then they eliminated any source of opposition in Russia from these oligarchs, right? I mean, the oligarchs in Russia, any enemies that Putin ever had in Russia just vanished into the haze, with all these machinations of Biden's, you know, but like, oh, yeah, we're going to impose economic sanctions on the guy that owns all, that controls all the world's food, right? Like, this is like, you guys have seen Animal House?
Yes, yes.
You remember Dean Wormer? You remember Dean Wormer was going to put the Deltas on double secret probation?
Yeah, they didn't even know.
This is exactly the same. This is Joe Biden putting Russia on double secret probation, right? And then you get to this question, like, oh yeah, he's going to deny them access to Western financial services. Whoa. Did you ever try to put ketchup or barbecue sauce on a financial service and eat it? That's how stupid that is. That's not ordinary stupidity. That's way beyond ordinary. That's extraordinary stupidity, right? I mean, that's beyond anything that's imaginable. And then, like, oh yeah, we're going to spend $33 billion on every kind of outmoded military technology and ship it all over there. They ain't got no way getting that shit to the eastern side of Ukraine where they would need it if they needed anything, right? The Russians just blown all the bridges and all the railway crossings and everything like that, from anywhere near Lvov or Poland or any of these stupid places out there towards the Donbass. There ain't no way getting it anywhere. We're going to put a 155 millimeter howitzer in the back of like a Dodge van or something like, I don't think that's going to work.
They're gonna use a Jeep.
Yeah, can't haul it with a tractor.
The only thing they can move anymore, aside from tennis shoes, is like, just civilian vehicles, right? I mean, just, Dodge vans would be the biggest. Anything bigger than that is already, I mean, and like I say, you got like 60 or 70 million of those guys that are trapped out there in those cauldrons, and they're all just going to get killed, right? It's like, I'm just hoping they wake up. I mean, I'm hoping at some point they walk out of there with their hands up in the air and just say, just let us have rifles and pistols. We'll walk into Kiev and kill all these motherfuckers, You understand what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, I got a question. Now, LaRouche back in the day said that his organization stated, because at that time he was gone, stated that the UK rather than Russia interfered in the 2016 elections.
Oh, you got it. You absolutely, absolutely.
And why are we sitting here not investigating, hint hint, these elections? Why are we not looking at them? I mean, we're supposed to be the United States fucking of America, if you get my drift.
Yeah, look, I can. You're asking for the same explanation that I just gave you a couple of times here.
Yes, it is, literally.
Look, you're talking about blackmail, and you're talking about like, Joe Biden is where he is today because too many people that were in positions in which they should have been able to stop it were too compromised, or too intimidated, or too blackmailed to do anything, right? They were not able to act. This included, Supreme Court justices and people, in charge of the election processes, like in too many of the states, right? and they've got enough information now, they should be able to decertify that election, like in those 6 or 8 swing states. They can't do it, right? I mean, whatever is going on up there, it's like they don't, the people that are still blocking everything up are the people that are, just completely compromised. If there's any one thing that the Democrat Party and the deep state is good at, it's getting to people, right? I mean, what you're talking about is something like, you ever watch judo contests,
Yes.
like Shohei or, okay, you know what that looks like. You know what arm locks look like. What you talk about with an arm lock in the judo contest is isolating, like all of your body strength against one joint in the other person's body, right? It's the same thing. It's like this thing that the deep state is doing is exactly like an arm lock in a judo contest. It's like they're bringing the whole force of the U.S. government, isolating it against one individual who's got no real resources in most cases. That's what's going on. You've got to find a way to protect people that can make decisions from the deep state, from the Democrat Party, from I would like to see the Democrat Party outlawed and banned, you know, same way they've outlawed the Nazi Party in
Damn!
Germany.
Outlawed and banned. God, jeez.
No,
Hey, I agree,
I
brother.
mean, my parents
I
are
can't
both
argue
like,
with it. I agree.
my parents are hardcore New Deal Democrats, right? Franklin Roosevelt all the way. I managed to convince my mother what had happened with the Democrat Party before she died, right? My father, not so much. It's like, but I mean, I just hate those idiots. I mean, I was brought up that way, right? But it took me about 5 years of living in the real world after college, to to think my way out of all that. Now, let me run something else by you. I mentioned being a math major in school. It's like, math majors normally minor in physics. Physics didn't interest me in those days. I minored in modern languages, right? I have coursework equivalent to another bachelor's in Russian language. I mean, I know a little bit more about Russia and Ukraine than most people do. Okay, I mean, I've attended a couple of the summer sessions at Norwich University, which is the
I know Warwick.
nation's premier immersion program. Okay,
I
so
did the
three
experiment
college,
in international living before well, Russia first, then experiment in international living. That's just another, what they say, travel knowledge bank, as they call it.
yeah. Um, Ukraine has been part of Russia since the time of Empress Catherine. Okay, the biggest celebration there ever was in Ukraine was when the Russians took the place over from Poland, in 17, whatever that was. Khrushchev um, he put the Ukraine under the jurisdiction. He put the Crimea under the jurisdiction. Give me a second here. I'm not thinking about that exactly right. At any rate, I mean, both the Crimea and Ukraine were part of Russia. I mean, for several hundred years, before Khrushchev did something in '54, right? I believe it was just placing that's what it was, placing Crimea under the control, under the bureaucratic control of Ukraine. At a point in time when everybody was a citizen of the Soviet Union, didn't matter, right? And of course, when the Soviet Union split up, it did matter, okay? And, you've got that whole eastern side of the Ukraine, which is Russian speaking. You've got parts of the south, which are Russian speaking, Mariupol. The Crimea, I mean, they took a vote like 95 to 5 or something like that to first leave Ukraine and then rejoin Russia after this color revolution in 2014. Okay, so I mean, there's absolutely no love lost between any of these people living in the Russian speaking side. They were trying to ban the Russian language, like in this is like the Bandera Nazis, right? The Pervo Nazis. It's like they sided with Hitler during World War II, right? And then you've always had Nazi elements in the Ukraine, and then they all joined the Ukrainian army and pretty much took over the Ukrainian army, within recent years. They're going to ban the use of the Russian language in the eastern side of Ukraine. That's ridiculous. I mean, the Ukrainian is, as far as I'm concerned, is a dead language. You guys still there?
Yes,
Mhm.
I mean, you're right. It is a dead language, and
Okay, look,
just like Latin,
here's what I'm going to tell you. Okay, look, here's what I would tell people. It's like, no, it's not just like Latin, but it's like the TV set and the internet have killed off the Southern accent in Texas, right? I mean, 40 years ago, I mean, you heard Southern in Texas. I mean, right now, if you want to hear Southern in Texas, you need to be talking to people my age or older. It doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, the TV set and the internet have killed it. You fast forward 25 or 30 years from now, and there's going to be like maybe about 8 or 10 languages anybody uses for anything. Okay, you're still going to need 2 Germanic languages. You're going to need English and German. You're going to need 2 or 3 Romance languages. You're definitely going to need French and Spanish. And you might still need Italian just for the opera, right? You're going to need like 1 Slavic language, which is Russian. There's no reason for any of the other Slavic languages to exist. You're going to need Hebrew and Arabic. I don't know if you need them, they're not going to go away, right? You're going to need 1 subcontinent language, which is Hindi, right? And then Mandarin Chinese and Korean and Japanese. And that's it. What's that, like 8 or 10?
You're right.
Okay.
Oh, my mother said Japanese.
That's 8 or 10 languages.
Are you going to include Japanese in that group?
Yeah. I said Korean and Japanese.
Okay.
Go away. Okay. I mean, Japan is a major, very major sort of an industrial and technological place. Right? But Ukrainian is basically, some people call it a dialect of Russian. It was basically the language of the Principality of Kiev, before the Mongol invasion. Okay, modern day Russian is like the language of the Principality of Suzdal from before the Mongol invasion, right? It's like, Kiev had been the epicenter of Slavic civilization prior to the Mongols. After that, the first Russian principality that ever got its act together was Moscow, right? And it took a while, right? So you had a period of a couple of hundred, of 100 years. You had what they call the Mongol yoke, like 150 years or so. Then you had like the first major battle that any group of Europeans had ever won against Mongols, like the Kulikovo, right? Zadonshina. And you had that like in 1380. And then, 2 or 3 years later, the White Horde and Golden Horde reunited and ran over Russia again. And Russia would have stayed, ran over them. Nonetheless, like right at that, like another few years went by, Tamerlane came to wipe the Golden Horde, right? I mean, so that pretty much all you had left of the Golden Horde was the Crimean Tartars, and Tamerlane's real interest was not Russia; it was India. Okay, so for a period of 100 years after all that, more or less, it's like Lithuania and Poland began to look like serious countries on a map until the Dukes of Kiev again got their act together, and then all of that sort of went away. The Battle of Poltava, right? And this is what I tell people. It's like, if you could imagine living in a world where Sweden was a serious country, was a powerful country. I mean, the Russians saved us from all of that. Tsar Peter saved us from that. And, if you can imagine driving around in a 50s Volvo, right? That's all the stuff that Tsar Peter saved us from. And the Russians have saved the West from horrible stuff like that, like several times. Napoleon and then Hitler, right? And what kind of thanks do they get for it?
Yeah, they've just turned into the enemies of the world.
Yeah. Um, I'm not happy. It's like there's no difference between the Democrat and the Republican parties on this thing going on in Ukraine. They all, as far as I'm concerned, you've got an absolute conflict between good and evil, between Christianity and Nazism, and the U.S. government plops itself straight down foursquare on the side of the Nazis, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. It shouldn't happen. How do you tell people that you're not happy with that? I mean, I don't want my tax dollars being used to support Nazism. That's just to me that makes no sense. Anyway, that's what all I've been concerning myself with. It's sort of taking the oxygen out of the room, like from ancient history and catastrophism and all that kind of stuff, right? But times are getting to be. I've we started here like about 7 o'clock. You guys still there?
Yeah, it's
Always
almost
here.
time for us to end the show, though. So
Yeah,
I think there's
I've
another
got to
show
get ready.
coming up.
I've got to be. You've got another show coming up now?
Oh yeah,
No,
we are 24 hours a no. The network has shows. We are 24 hours a day, literally. And Valkyrie will tell you, I'm up. Yeah. We're literally a 24-hour.
ridiculous amounts of hours a day.
Yeah. We're literally a 24/7 network. And listen, honestly, we have great shows, and you fit in everybody's show, so you know you're going to be called on, because I got some hosts in the chat room that's mentioning you. They're sending me messages. Valkyrie, you shouldn't have done this.
See, I'm trying to get you some publicity, Theo.
Right. Right. No, that's good. I'll be happy to come on the show. That's perfectly good. It's like, hopefully do a little bit better with some of the images. So.
Oh, and we can go Skype. We can go Skype. But hold on, Valkyrie, you're gonna have to do your good night. So you ready?
Yes. All right, people. Just remember that if you want to help defray the cost of the show, and you go to my Facebook group, Musings of a Demented Mind, you will find a link to my GoFundMe to help pay for the cost of this show weekly. Very much appreciated. If you have any questions you want to ask the show, feel free to ask them in the Musings of a Demented Mind group, and we can see about addressing them. And if you want to read Theo's book, it's called The Ganymede Hypothesis, and the previous version of it was Worlds in Collision. It's very interesting and very informative. I believe Worlds in Collision is available on Amazon.
It's called Valkyrie. It's called Cosmos.
Cosmos in Collision.
Velikovsky's book was called.
Yes,
Cosmos.
I'm getting it confused with the Velikovsky one.
There is a
Cosmos in Collision.
There is a paperback.
Thank you, Theo.
There is a paperback version of Cosmos in Collision. I don't have a paperback version of the Ganymede hypothesis just yet. Okay, the Ganymede hypothesis is better organized than Cosmos in Collision. It's easier to read. Okay, so like I said, give me a couple months on that, and hopefully, let me run something else. But like I say, everything on that website, Cosmos, the GanymedeHypothesis.com is free, right? The PDF version of that book is free. You download it, right? It's in zip format. Okay, very easy to read. You can shift back and forth from one section of it to the other very easily. Just any kind of a thing that reads PDF files. Holden, you still there?
Yes, I am always here.
Okay. You might want to do another show on another aspect of this whole thing, which is these NASA JPL Mars images. Okay. You've got a baker's dozen Facebook groups which are totally dedicated to going over these NASA JPL Mars images pixel by pixel. And that's not because Mars is or ever has been a dead world, okay? NASA is just a government agency. It does not have the number of eyes that it takes, or it doesn't even come close to having the number of eyes that it takes go over and pick out interesting things and all the,
Yes.
all,
Ruins on
all of that
Mars.
huge library of images. I'm sorry, the one that I like best is Remy Bar-Elan's group, which is called Exclusive Mars Images. You can just get on Facebook and type in Exclusive Mars Images. Okay, you can get a flavor for that stuff. But, like I say, you've got small animals, you've got indigenous people, you've got U.S. government workers, you've got all kinds of things on Mars right now, which according to standard theory shouldn't be there. And, the manned space program, the American manned space program, got locked up in a kind of a black op la la land starting in the mid 70s, right? I mean, they were seeing stuff like on the moon and on Mars. It just messed their minds too badly. At that point, they figured, hey, we can't let this stuff out into the public anymore. It's like the world's worst kept secret, right? And NASA is using these Facebook groups, right? Like I say, the internet and particularly Facebook does have the number of eyes that it takes to go over all these images pixel by pixel. And the stuff that they're turning up is just breathtaking. You've got indigenous humans, you've got small animals. You have this one picture of a little ground squirrel, which went viral both on Google and on YouTube, like about 6 or 8 years ago, right? It's like you can just get on YouTube or Google, either one, type in squirrel on Mars, right? If you're on Google, then just switch to an image search, right? Type in squirrel on Mars, it's still there, right? And it's just as plain as day. I mean, that's a close up. See, a lot of the things that you see in those images are like, half a mile back in the image, right? I mean, up until just lately, they haven't had anything that could fly over Mars, that they've been having to direct these rolling probes over paths, which are, pretty much a.
Oh my God! It is a squirrel.
Yeah, that's what people.
It's even got eyes.
That's what people, tell me. So I've had people, told them, you've been smoking too much reefer here, man. It's like, this shit doesn't happen in real life. And then they look at that and say, Jesus, Daddy, that's a squirrel.
No, well, my favorite's the picture of the rover, where it's taking a picture of itself, and you can clearly see the shadow of somebody in a helmet.
Yeah.
Standing next to the rover.
That may or may not be. There's a controversy about that one. That you may or may not be seeing what you think you're seeing with that one. But like I said, there's this one picture of a woman with a minimalistic oxygen tank on, examining the head of a statue lying on the ground, right? And that one's pretty obvious. There's reason to believe that this is not an indigenous woman. She's not behaving like an indigenous. See, I mean, an indigenous woman would have seen this statue head like 2 or 3 times as a child, wouldn't be interested in it, right? And, the pictures that show indigenous people show them looking, peeking around corners or from behind rocks and whatnot, looking at the rover as if like, what the hell is that, right? And I see this woman in this picture knows what the rover is. She's not interested in it, right? So to me, it's obvious enough that this is it's a U.S. government worker, right? Probably GS-11 or 12 or something like that, but
Wow.
Anyway,
you see people outside the SSB confirming stuff that the people on the SSB have been saying. That we've had people on Mars for years.
They're not confronted. I mean, the government is not never admitted to this, right? But like I said, it's the world's worst kept secret. In order to get to, here's another thing. Look, in order to get to Mars with human beings aboard, I mean, rocket engines are not going to cut it, right? I mean, anything powered by rocket engines is going to take 10 or 11 or 12 months to get to Mars. Right?
Why you need electrogravitic engines?
I'm sorry? Yeah, now look.
Why you need electrogravitic engines?
Yeah, that's right. You can end up using B-Phil Brown propulsion. They needed 2 things to go outwards They needed two things to get to Mars and beyond, starting from the 1970s. They needed a propulsion system that was up to it. You need constant acceleration, okay? Even with just 1G of constant acceleration, you could get to Alpha Centauri in a few months. It's not going to take you like 10 or 20 or 30 years. You just saw this movie called Avatar, right, where they show the best you could possibly hope for, using anything that even remotely resembles rocket engines, using antimatter as a fuel. He said it was going to take 6 years, right? And these people are going to have to sit there in suspended animation for 6 years? No. Look, it's like Columbus's men were on the verge of death when they got to the Americas, right? I mean, this is like just trying to survive for 2 months at sea, where they could exercise, climb up in the rail and the rigging, do all this kind of sailor stuff, right? Had fish to eat, right? But I mean, it was like they were on the edge of losing it at the end of 2 months. You're not going to make it like for 11 months in a spaceship on a trip to Mars. I'm sorry. It's like this one little area of my other little hobby shop website, goes into detail about, the propulsion. You needed two things. You needed a propulsion system and you needed compute power density. You needed to be able to plot courses out there without having a computer take up like however many thousand cubic feet, right? You understand what I'm saying? The computers that they had just, up until the Apollo missions weren't going to do that. The first time they really had compute power that was adequate was going to be like in the middle 80s, right? When you had the Motorola chips, you had the 680-20, 680-30, 40.
Microelectronics.
Started getting microelectronics and you started getting hard drives that could hold enough data, right? So two things, right? But the Motorola chips were the first things that you had that could give you that kind of compute power in a small package. You needed major league compute power in a small package, and you needed a propulsion system. Those things were there by the mid to late, certainly by the middle 80s, right? Now, this Ben Rich said that that we were able to reach the nearest stars by the early 90s. Said by 92 or 93, we could take ET home, right? And so I assume at this point that they've had a good look at Ganymede by now. They have to be aware of Troy's in my book, right? They have to have seen Ganymede. It's like in all likelihood, and I would bet it heavily this way, that they've been at least to Proxima Centauri. And they may have been, we've got like about 12 or 14 or 15 like dwarf stars within a few light years of Earth, right? And I'm sure they've been to at least one or two of those places. But do they ever tell any, like Ben Rich said, it's for any of that technology to ever get out into the world to where it could do mankind any more than the littlest bit of good, would take an act of God, right? But at any rate, that would make an interesting sort of a little talk for an hour or two. We could do maybe next week sometime or something, right? I enjoy talking about that. Like I said,
sounds like a plan to
I
me.
kind of have to take off at this point.
Oh yeah, sounds like a plan to me. So Valkyrie, can you say goodnight, Valkyrie?
Good night, Valkyrie. Hopefully we'll get Theo back next week.
Oh yeah, we gotta have